Welcome to another episode of Talks with Tech Leaders. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Michael Tomaras. Not only has Michael been on a bit of a journey in his software career, but also this journey has took him across the world as well. And now he's back in the Northeast. So Michael, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Brilliant. No, I'm really excited as well. So would you mind just giving a bit of an intro to yourself?
Absolutely. So, as you said, I'm Michael Tomaras. I've been a software engineer, now software development manager for a lot of years. I think I'm closing into 18 now, which is a lot. I actually didn't have that number until you asked me. I live in the Northeast. I live in North Shields, close to Tynemouth. And yes, you're right. I have been a bit of a journey. I'm originally from Greece, so that's where I started. And now I went to the UK for work, then moved over to Australia for a lifestyle change and work, and that went great. And now we're back to be close to family. So yeah, that's me.
I was just going to say, sorry, how many years did you spend in Australia?
It was 5.5 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a nice amount of time. A little bit in Melbourne and a little bit in Sunshine Coast, which is right above Brisbane in Queensland.
Yeah.
Which is, I think it's exactly what it says on the tin. It's a really, really nice sunny place.
Yeah. So how long have you been back now in the Northeast?
Less than a year, really. We came back in August.
Yeah.
And we were lucky to kind of have an established network of friends and family and also jobs, which was very lucky to get really easily. And yeah, we've been, living the family life here ever since.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's great to hear.
Yeah.
I guess you might miss the sun a little bit then in Australia compared to here.
Well, yes and no. People are surprised when they ask me this, but it can be extremely hot. So as long as I can see the sun a little bit here, which does happen, very often, but not, continuously, I'm actually quite happy. That this temperature where you can be outside with just a little jacket, I think it's the perfect temperature, to be honest.
Oh, great.
But yeah.
So I want to go back to the start of your software journey. So
Absolutely.
I like asking this question because when I do speak to everybody has like a unique story in terms of, what got them into software. So what was your first interest in software?
As far back as I can remember, I was always interested in tinkering with my PC or Atari or whatever I had in front of me, electronic. That kind of just naturally happened. I can't really explain it. It was just my interest as a kid. When I went to uni, I decided to do communication networks. So I did that. And that then through the uni itself, I noticed that only a few modules were about software engineering and software development. Most of them were about hardware and antennas and things like that. But I did enjoy those modules more than anything. And that's kind of what guided me into software development moving forward. I knew that after I got out of uni, I wanted to be more on the software side than the hardware side. And yeah, that's what happily happened after that.
Yeah. And then from there, would you say you had probably quite a traditional journey of going to college, university, finding software there, and then getting into your first job?
Nothing interesting there, as vanilla as it gets when it comes to professional journeys. I went to uni studying that, and then straight out of uni, one of my professors who owned also a consultancy hired me as a junior developer, so very lucky there.
Yes, handy.
Very handy, yes. So I spent quite a few years there, about 5 years in Athens doing that. Then I moved over to the UK, where I worked for a music label that produces music for video editors. So that was my journey up to senior in that position. Then a small stint in Newcastle where I was also a senior before I moved over to Australia. Then in Australia, I worked in Melbourne for the duration of my stay there, and went through the rest of the career development from senior to tech lead, and then to head of software, head of tech, for a very small finance services company. And after we decided to come back, I moved back, and I took you could argue a slight step back, but it's not really. It's actually a step forward in the sense that I'm not a head of anything tech. I'm head of the software development for customer-facing teams at a company called Renaissance Global. But this time the challenge is that this is the first company that is as big as it is in my career, at least. I've always been part of very small companies because I like that kind of mentality and culture of being, a small team, easy to collaborate with, things happening very fast. But now this is the new part of the challenge, I guess.
Yeah. And did you always, from, I guess, early on in your career, know that you would move into people management, or was it something that maybe just happened by opportunity where there was an opportunity there, or it was maybe thrust upon you?
The growth into management was actually something that happened very organically. I definitely did not anticipate I would do it. I was, your classic non-experienced hardcore engineer, all about the tech, all about the code bases, all about the keyboard. But what happened was, as I grew professionally, I noticed that there were cases where my scope of influence was ending. So as a software engineer, I didn't have any control I felt that I didn't have any control in the software standards of the team or the way the work flowed into the team, what our roadmap looked like, which is, I guess, kind of natural, especially for an unexperienced engineer. And then I said, okay, what do I need to do to get that influence? And then kind of became senior, then became a tech lead, trying to influence the way the team works and what work comes into it. Then I realized that, again, the scope of influence grew, but then it also stopped somewhere else. So I said, okay, I'm going to go to that part, head of development, and then the same thing and the same thing. While doing that, having to manage people, as a matter of fact, I realized that I quite enjoyed building people systems as much as building software systems. So it was interesting that there were very similar challenges in terms of, the way you think about in a code base, you think about the way data flows. In a people system, you think about the way communication flows and information in general. And the software systems can be a bit more deterministic, which is interesting. People systems are a lot less deterministic, as you understand, which is also got its own kind of set of challenges because obviously you have to understand people a lot deeper at an individual level. So anyway, that proved to be, an interesting challenge as well. So when I kind of kept growing, I didn't actually feel so bad about not being so close to the code anymore, even though I do miss it occasionally, to be honest. But I still feel okay. I still try to get involved as much as possible when it comes to, high-level designs, tech standards, discussions, cross-team standards, and best practices. But yes, I'm not actually coding anymore.
Yeah. When you were in some of the smaller companies, were you still working under other managers and other leaders? And was it something that you felt you had to put a lot of work into to learn about, or was it something that you felt as you were progressing that you were able to acquire it as you were progressing through your career?
Are you asking about mentors specifically?
Yeah. So in the companies, did you have a mentor?
Yeah.
And did you have people that were supporting you through that growth?
Not, I want to say not explicitly as, with the actual label of a mentor. It was usually my manager that was my de facto mentor. And I have been lucky to have had very good tech leads in most of my positions before becoming one. And they have been incredibly helpful, essentially being effectively my mentors. To be honest, I wish I had sought out mentors more consciously and with more intent.
Right.
Even from when I was a junior, I didn't know any better, to be honest. But I would definitely argue that it's something that everybody needs to be doing. People speaking out to all your audience here, if you don't have a mentor, wherever you are in your career, make sure you find one. To be fair, they will pretty much help you navigate things. Like myself, I was able to navigate the career path anyway, so it turned out okay, I feel. But there are some things that, in hindsight, if I had somebody to talk to, I would have avoided some, issues and pitfalls and other wrong turns in my career. And I might have been a little bit better now. So definitely seek out mentors if you don't have them. To be fair, being a mentor now to younger people and employees within my company, but also outside of it, I do find that speaking with a person, it is an intimate relationship to a certain extent, you need to find the right person to click with. So it's not like you can just seek out somebody and find a mentor as a very easy thing to do. You may have to try a few people, but once you find a good mentor, I feel, because I have a couple of mentor relationships that are, I would argue, very, very good. We are on the same, on the same wavelength, and I do feel, and they also give me that feedback, that they've been, incredibly helped by our communication. So definitely do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how would you maybe recommend somebody to reach out to someone to mentor them?
Cold call. Like, obviously there's many channels. Definitely through your work, there should be programs and ways to seek out and find mentors. But also outside of work, I would argue that there's also programs like communities of mentorship that you could seek out. I think there's just a simple search in LinkedIn or Google will give you enough results to keep you occupied for days. But at the very least, if you like somebody and you feel they would be a good mentor for you, reach out to them, cold call them, cold message them. More often than not, people will actually be okay with it, given they have the time and the opportunity. I doubt, based on my experience, at least in the software industry, it's one of the things that I'm happy about being in this industry is how open people are to helping other people, in whatever kind of context, whether it's inside of work or outside. You can see that if you go to any conference, any meetup, any work environment. So I'd be surprised if you reached out to somebody who had the time and said, no, I won't talk to you for an hour every other month. Yeah. It's very, very unlikely. So just reach out. Yeah.
No, yeah, I agree. I think we were chatting a little bit earlier about the power of networking, and certainly even from the meetup that I run, I have found that that people that are presenting or other people that are there, that they've built relationships with developers there. So then they've reached out to them regarding projects. They've reached out to them about experience or even, discussing companies. So yeah, I think, as you said earlier, like networking's, incredibly powerful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I wanted to touch a little bit about your how you, I guess, went and, how you feel you maybe improved your management skills, speaking to a lot of tech leaders. A lot of them go down not strictly academic route, but they like to read a lot of books, a lot of different books, and then also sometimes they try and put them into practice. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. How did you specifically, would you say, improved or look to improve your management skills?
Absolutely. It's actually nothing different than what you already said, and that's, I think, for a reason. Management skills is not something you can teach academically. It's not the same as learning a software language or a tech stack or a framework. It is about communicating and with people, influencing people, and every person is different. So different things work on different people in different contexts, different problem spaces and solution spaces. So it is a fact that, and that's why I guess you can see it by the sheer volume of management books and frameworks and quadrants and everything that exists out there. There's no right solution for everyone. It depends on your personality and the context you find yourself into and the people that you want to manage. So it is true that the best way to learn is through experience. You have to just start doing it, managing and leading. But to be fair, there are a lot of frameworks out there, and why not, go out and find the ones that fit to yourself. But be aware that just because something is out there doesn't necessarily mean it fits your style of communication or management. So yes, I'm on the same boat. I read a lot of books. I like reading books in general. That's my main way of, I guess, upskilling and learning. And I have a few that have stuck with me, and I've started using them. As you said, you try to use them, and if they work, you keep using them. So I think the one that's mostly worked for me is a book called Drive. You may have heard it. It's called The Surprising Thing That Motivates People. And to cut the long story short, it is autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Salary also motivates people, but only up to a certain point. After that, if you don't have those other three things, salary won't really do anything, which was very interesting to me when I read it. So when I think about my team and the company and the culture and everything else, I think in those three terms mainly. So that's my kind of say my most used framework. We can dig into it a bit later. There are some other high-level principles that I also like to use. There's a radical transparency and radical candor, which is also a book.
Yeah.
I think are very, very important to have in place. That is something that, again, I apply relentlessly, and I do feel it works. I've also read another book, which is a very, very good book. I would recommend it to any aspiring manager, because it's really approachable and easy to understand for people trying to become managers, which is called The Making of a Manager. And it has its own little trifecta in it, which is people, process, and purpose, which is also a nice way to categorize, your thoughts as a manager. And one book that also made me think a lot, and I have been applying it, which kind of ties into the previous points that I made, is a book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, which, again, to summarize it very briefly, it talks about the lack of trust, lack of conflict, lack of commitment, accountability, and results. Those 5 things, if they're missing, there are issues, smells in the team that you have to really start addressing. So these are the things that, even though I've tried other things as well, these are the things that have really, really helped me throughout most of my career so far, I'd say.
Yeah. And how would you recommend somebody goes about applying what they've learned from the books into obviously the real workplace scenario? Yeah. And have there been some challenges depending on the environment and the team that's there as well?
Yes, absolutely. Back to my initial answer, it is very contextual, and it depends on the business you find yourself in and the team you're trying to address. Nothing works in every context. As a manager, if anything, you have to be always open to shifting your approach almost real time, if you can feel that, to try to address those things. So definitely, I think, like anything, if you try to influence any sort of change within a company, it's good to first start from the people receiving that value of that change. So I would say if you read a new book and you're very keen on trying it out, make sure you spend the time with people to try to understand if the book fits their problem. If the solution actually fits that you have in your head fits the problem that you think exists, and then present the book as a solution. But I think if you try this cautious approach, because that's always the case, whether you're trying to push change in a company or a process, whether you're trying to, if anything, even the things we build and we sell, that's what product people do, product managers and marketers, don't they? They try to find the issue, the problem, and try to solve that rather than just push solutions out to people. So the same applies to this, I would say.
Yeah. Great. So Peter Drucker famously quoted that culture eats strategy for breakfast. Yeah. What are your thoughts on this quote?
It's a good quote. I'll start with another quote from my first tech lead in London when I first went, which he told me, it's all about the people. At that point, it sounded to me like, an experienced dev, more like a Shaolin monk saying, give me a hike or something, and I didn't know what was happening. But the more I thought about this throughout my career, the more it made sense. As in, what I realized is software isn't about the software. You build software for people, with people. So the with people, so for people is, what product management and marketing does. That's not our purpose here. But you build software with people as well. So you have to consider that it is the most important, if the people interactions and the people setting doesn't work, it will be incrementally hard, if not impossible, to build the thing you're trying to build. So back to your quote, absolutely agree. Strategy planning can be the best in the world. You can have the best research, market research, and industry research, and everything, customer research, everything you want to do, and build an impeccable strategy. But you won't be able to deliver it if you don't have a culture that works. In yet more words, great culture can support any strategy. Great strategy cannot build a great culture. So it would say it's interesting because people say that and focus a lot on culture as if it's something you can manufacture. It's not. It really isn't, because I've noticed, at least in my experience, that culture is very organic. No matter what you say your culture is, what culture is actually is your actions. Actions speak louder than words in this case. It's every action that you do and every employee does builds up to this thing called culture. And it's also just a snapshot, right? Because it can be very good today, it can deteriorate very quickly, and it can take a long time to build back up. And it fluctuates up and down in terms of what you consider quality culture. So just be aware that, it's not just about words. It's almost always about actions. Yeah, you could. Another way to think of culture for me is as a vehicle. Like, in order to do anything, you have a team of people, whether in your own team or the company as a whole, and you're trying to put the same vision and the same context and the same plan in their heads, and then hope that they all go towards that vision without having to micromanage everyone, obviously. Hope that they all go to that vision, that direction, and achieve success for themselves and the company. If you don't have a right culture in place, which is that collection of actions, and we talked about before, I would say it's almost impossible to keep everybody on the same page for the duration of what you're trying to do, which is pretty much the lifetime of the company, to be honest. So, making sure you put together the right mix of people when it comes to skills, diversity, and everything else, and the right strategy, and the right plan. Those things, I would think of them as culture is a basket, a boat, and you put everything in there, and it kind of just goes, if that makes sense. Fundamental. It's a fundamental thing. You can't escape it. Yeah. Absolutely agree with your quote.
Yeah. I really like what you said about you can't say this is the culture and that's that. And that can deteriorate quite quickly. It's a good way to look at it, where it is a set of actions, and they have to be the right actions. So one of the questions I usually like to ask is what not in terms of how can you build a positive culture. I guess the right question would be then what steps would you take in order for the culture to, I guess, be positive, fit in line with getting the company, ahead?
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of fits back into the frameworks I mentioned before in the books that I read. What I like to do is to think that if I have these few elements in place, which is to recount is autonomy, mastery, purpose, transparency, and good candor and feedback. If you have these things in place, no matter your industry or your product or what you're trying to do, you will almost always succeed. I can't personally think of any sort of culture issue that wouldn't be solved by one of these 5 things. So when I talk about autonomy, I mean pretty much all decisions pushed down. Again, even if it feels counterintuitive or the wrong thing to do, I would definitely suggest trying it. I've tried it as well, especially in my last role, and it works like a charm. So all decisions down, give the autonomy to people to decide what needs to be done. Don't give them the problem statement, but don't give them the solution. You could argue that sometimes there are dependencies that you need to manage for them to do their job. I would say no. Still, it's their dependency. They can manage it.
So with that, you'd say that don't give them the solution, or don't even sort of guide them towards the solution that you would do?
No, absolutely not. And it's true that most, you could argue, maybe sometimes, most of the time, their solution will be the same as yours, and that's okay. Quite often, it will be better than yours, and people don't want to accept that, but it's true. Only because it's just a matter of fact. You only have one brain. You might have a lot of experience, but you have one brain. A team has more brains than you. It's just a fact. And also, it is very fulfilling to a person to be able to say, you know what, I made this, I created this. Think, taking a picture versus, hammering a nail in an assembly line. It is different. Mastery, according to that book at least, is the ability to give people the knowledge and the tools to do the work the best way they can. Again, this is on me. I feel if it's something I have to do to make sure they have those tools and the knowledge and the training. Again, it's very fulfilling for people knowing that they are the best that they can be at what they like to be doing, which is we're lucky to say in the software industry that people are not really forced into it or do it because they don't have other options. People come into it because they really like it. So building on that and reinforcing that always pays off, I feel. Purpose, it's not just the tools, it's not just the roadmap. People, and this applies to any company really, not just software. People need to understand the vision of the company and be bought into it as well. They need to understand the strategy that flows from the vision and then the roadmap and the plans. And they need to be bought into it. And it takes time to address the feedback as well, because you can't assume that everybody will just read your vision statement and they will be on board. You need to be spending time with them, addressing their feedback, filling in the gaps. Again, that vision and strategy will fluctuate, feeding from the autonomy part as well. That it will fluctuate and evolve to something that hopefully the whole team is bought into and really striving to it. Then we have feedback, my favorite thing. There is counterintuitively, again, you might say, poorly delivered feedback should not be delivered. I feel that's wrong. Even poorly delivered feedback, especially the constructive kind most often, obviously, when you have something to say negative about somebody else or something that you don't like, or constructive, as I said, you have to say it. Yes, you might not be able to deliver it well, and that's a personal skill that you can work on. But if there is feedback to be given, it means there's an underlying problem to be solved. It might be an issue, it might not, but it needs to be addressed. So I would say feedback, give it left and right, up and down, all directions at any given point. If you see something that doesn't fit your narrative, your purpose, your vision, your tools, your skill set, whatever, tell your manager, tell your peers, tell your manager of your manager, tell the CEO, give feedback openly. Obviously, the better you can deliver the feedback, the more impactful it will be. If you don't deliver feedback well, it actually has the opposite effect initially, but a good manager will be able to realize that it's not the actual, it's the content of the feedback. The content of the feedback is still valid, but delivery can be worked on. So that's another the element. The last element I would say is transparency. Again, in a radical manner, transparency of the process, transparency of progress, transparency of issues, transparency of planning, transparency of changes. Anything that ever happens should be easily discoverable by anyone that wants to discover it. Obviously, trying to communicate this to everybody and at every level of the company is hard, so we're going for the broadcasting version here. So roadmaps available to everyone, vision available to everyone, changes broadcasted to everyone, issues open to everyone, just your plans, your designs, your concerns open to everyone. This might seem like information overload at first, but there are ways to manage it by, as I said, like asynchronous broadcasting, subscribing to the right channels of communication, and other ways. But so I wouldn't peel away from transparency because of the admin overhead that it might create in your head of too much information coming towards me. If anything, I would try to manage the flow of information, subscribing to the bits that I care about. But still, I know that if I wanted something else at any given point, I could go and find it somewhere. So yeah, these are the main things I think that will, if you have these things in place, I can't think of why you would not have a good culture, to be honest.
Yeah. And do you think if you've got these things in place, you talk about like autonomy, mastery, vision, feedback, and transparency, that the team members will feel psychologically safe when it comes to, speaking about any issues, speaking about, feedback from their
That's a great
side?
question. That's a great question. The answer is not always, because these extremes, as I'm describing them, can feel very confronting. And if there's something we've all learned through working with people over many years, is that different people have different personalities and communication styles. Some people are a lot more open to being this open. Some people are not, and they're not comfortable, and they need help. So it is, I feel, on the manager of each team to be able to know their team intimately in terms of where they stand in the scale and help them be fully transparent, fully, giving feedback left and receiving feedback very nicely. And also feeling that their autonomy is a positive and not a negative, because this autonomy, mastery, purpose thing is good, but it also implies accountability. And some people might shy away from that instinctively, not for a good reason, but it's not something if you haven't been used to it, saying, you know what, it's your decision, you own the delivery of this. And if it fails, you have to tell me why. It might be confronting for some people. They might not be used to it. It takes more time for some people to get used to it than others. And I would also add that on top of all of this, which is kind of implied, but it's good to mention it, is that failure should never be punished. I would say I'm more than happy for things to fail. If anything, failure means you found something that doesn't work and you go on and we want to repeat it again. The only thing that I would be worried about is repeated failure of the same kind, as in if you're repeating the same mistakes again and again and again. There's an underlying reason there that we need to discuss. But trying things and not working is great. So if you have the autonomy and the accountability for delivering that roadmap, you may not estimate well. Something unplanned might happen, an incident might happen or something, and you'll miss your plan and your estimation. That's absolutely fine. It's okay. But some people might not be initially okay with it because they see any failure as an actual failure or not doing their jobs well. I would say if there's a rule underlying all of these is that if you're not failing, I'm kind of worried, to be honest. Like, it means you're not trying something new, you're not trying to do something better, you're not trying to evolve yourself. And that would also be kind of worrying. Again, it doesn't build to the whole mastery and purpose thing, like why you're not evolving as a professional.
Yeah. I think, if there is a fear of failure, then autonomy can seem like a scary thing to have because you don't want that responsibility. You'd rather somebody else have it. So, I think, the points you made there are really good. I know you touched on something a little bit with autonomy about having, members of the team that are solving, the problem, not just yourself. So it kind of leads on to a question that I like to ask is about allyship and diversity. And maybe you can suggest, maybe it looks like I'm suggesting something, but how important do you think that is in teams?
Diversity of all kinds is important. You can see it obviously on the skill level, right? Which you need different skills. People have different competencies, different expertise, and you need all of those to get something holistic into production and used by users. So that's a very simple example of diversity, but a very obvious one. What actually has been the case for me, at least in my experience, and I don't have any sort of scientific research to back it up, it's just my anecdotal experience, is that diversity of thought is also very important. And diversity of thought is supported, and as a manager, you can incentivize, you can manufacture it almost by hiring for diversity of other dimensions like gender, backgrounds, I want to say seniority, ethnicity, religion, everything counts, because the people is not just their hard skills, it's also their soft skills. And it's a fact, I guess, that the more diversity means more opportunities to think something from a different angle than not. And that is what actually, gets you further faster rather than, trying a trodden path or a trodden way of doing things. If knock on wood, it's not the right one, which is probably, 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 1,000,000 that it's the right one. You need that nudge from somebody in the team to say, what about this? What about that? Whether it's about the product, whether it's about the way the team works, whether it's about people, you need that. So it is important. And I would say not doing it is actually shutting doors really for your team and your personal growth, to be honest. Maybe that project that Google did was very relevant. I'm not sure, but maybe people would like to look into it. It's what called Project Aristotle, I think it was called. It was quite a few years ago, and they tried. They went and researched how teams were performing over many years, and what they found was that teams with highly skilled employees that were not communicating well, which were obviously, and was also I think they were less diverse, where you would think that a team of very highly skilled individuals would be better than a team of less skilled individuals with more diversity and same size. It actually proved to be the opposite, which was very interesting.
Yeah.
Because of that, openness of options, openness of minds, and better communication, for that matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. We've had a good discussion on culture, and I think it's important that I guess leaders have a big impact on the culture. So, in your eyes, what would you say makes a great leader?
If focus, the first thing I would say is what I've found. I like to kind of categorize things in my head in a hierarchy of most important things to less important, right? So one of the things that I've realized over the last year or so is that trust is probably the most important thing for a leader. I feel that any job I would join, personally, the first thing I would be looking for moving forward is to build trust. I feel that kind of underpins anything else I would be trying to do in that job. If you don't have trust, basically means having spent enough time with people to know them and for them to know that you know what you're doing and for them to trust you when you give things to them. So, or ask them to do things or suggest big changes. So if you don't have that in place, it will just make everything else so much slower and so much more cumbersome to get over the line. The way I think is the best way to build trust is communicate a lot. You can't rush it. You have to spend time with the people you want to build the trust with. You have to do it on an individual level. So again, it takes time. That's why people give you a lot of onboarding time as well. And most jobs, including our company at the moment, say for the first 2 weeks, you don't have to do anything. Just talk to people. Talk to as many people as possible. Get them to know you. Get to know them, what they need and what you need. And that is a solid foundation to move forward. So the best way for me to build trust is to talk first of all, talk to people. The second one I feel is doing what you're saying you're going to do by the time you're going to do it, so that people know, repeat that feeling for people saying, if this is happening, I know if Michael says he's going to do this thing, it will happen. And the more you do that, I feel it kind of adds up in a bit of a cumulative way. If everybody trusts each other, things will move faster forward. So that's the main thing. If, without trying to repeat everything which I said before about what makes a good culture and good management and everything, I think what makes a good manager specifically, and what I'm trying to do again is as a high-level rule of thumb that I always keep in my head is that, can I build a team that will make me redundant as I exist today? And don't worry, I've said this to a couple of managers and we're like, what? Make me redundant? No way, I'll lose my job. Whatever. That's not the case. That's not what I meant. Please listen. What I mean is you will never be redundant. What will happen is that that team will basically be able to run itself, and you will create for yourself more space to do other things that you need to be doing that you're not doing today. So is there a way where I can go away for 6 months, right? That's obviously a very theoretical example. I could go away for 6 months and my teams will keep building and evolving the roadmaps, keep delivering them very well, keep improving and hire and do everything else that they need to be doing operationally, whether that's people-wise or systems-wise, without fail. How can I do that? And that's when you start to think about the culture, the actual environment, the tools, the people, the learning, the training, everything else kind of flows from that. If you don't have a manager that is trying to make themselves redundant, I would say they're probably missing a trick. Like there's definitely more things you could be doing.
Yeah. I think it works like that in business as well. I've been doing some work with a coach and mentor, and he suggested that he wants me to get the business in a place where once I have a functioning team, that then I could, one of the tests would be go away for 2 weeks, switch your phone off, come back, and then was there any issues whilst you were absent, fix those, then do it again further down the line where you do it for a month, and then a larger portion of time. So I can resonate with that. It's interesting. Yeah. So you talked a little bit about how diversity is important for high performing teams. What are your thoughts on conflict? Do you think it's healthy to have conflict in teams? And I guess what's the resolutions with that as well?
Depends on your definition of conflict. I would say if you talk about conflict as constructive and well-delivered feedback, absolutely. One of the things I mentioned before. If you're talking about the opposite, absolutely not. It undermines the culture. And we said how culture is a very foundational thing. You can't get it wrong. It takes time to build up. It takes very little time to tear down. So good conflict in the sense that people challenge each other, I expect it, if anything. Conflict of people being jerks is a absolute no. Even if the person is high performing, I would prefer them to not be on the team if they are disruptive in that sense. It might affect the short-term goal. I've actually sacrificed the short-term goal for that reason. And I stand by that decision because, a short-term financial gain or something else for the company is a lot worse than trying to fix a culture issue over the next year or two. So yes, conflict, good conflict is good. You should definitely try to challenge it. Again, it's the thing of always getting people a little bit out of their comfort zone in the sense of making them think about things they haven't thought about before. Yes, absolutely.
So I want to talk a little bit about software developers. So I work with a lot of developers at all levels, people who are often looking for work, but also often looking to progress well in their career as well. So a good thing, I guess, for a developer to know would be what sort of things would somebody like Michael like to see me do? What sort of things do they like? What qualities and what areas do you tend to look for?
It's the breakthrough moment. What qualities that we look at. I think it's one of the things that people might think about companies, including ours, which is an edtech company, is that it's about the money. It's not about the purpose of the company. Sometimes that is that kind of can seep into the recruitment. So one way we're trying to address that is to make sure that people actually understand the company and they care about the company and its customers, which are the students and the teachers. So we make it part of our hiring process. We are actively trying to hire, and retain people that think about the end customer. It's as a software developer applying for many jobs, you might argue it's hard to do at a level of research, but for the companies you really like and you really love, you really should. So if it's about the first quality, I would say that should shine through your interview alongside your technical skills is your understanding of the customer and the business. Showing to us that you can think outside of just code. That's very, very important. Because to be fair, work will come towards you. Part of that autonomy, we expect you to be able to challenge if some work does not actually fit what our customers need, which could happen, you never know. So, but getting a bit more specific, I would expect, depending on the seniority that we're hiring for, everybody in the team, regardless of the seniority actually, will be exposed to the whole software development lifecycle. They will be exposed to the problem statement, the discovery of the solution, the delivery of the solution, the long-term operations. And depending on their skill set where they excel at, so somebody might be a backend engineer, front engineer, more like a DevOps infrastructure engineer, more security minded, whatever their expertise is, they need to be very good at that. So there's obviously the technical part of the interview that addresses specifically that. But I would say I'm not particularly fussed if about specific experience in specific tech stacks. The thing that matters most is understanding higher level needs of software development, which apply across tech stacks, across languages, across frameworks, whether you're front end, back end, whatever. Thinking about things like understanding trade-offs in software development. No solution is a perfect solution. Every solution is contextual. Our favorite answer as software engineers has always been, it depends. So, there's no such thing as this is the right thing. It's the right thing for this context, for this solution at this time, not for next month, kind of thing. So showing us that you can understand the trade-offs of high-level software development. You can understand quality. It's very important, especially the automated kind. You can understand delivery and releases, and you can understand long-term operations as well. So that's kind of holistic view. Again, you might have a particular strength into all of these, but understanding the rest is very, very important. Being outcomes driven and data driven as well is very good. I'm very, very wary of what people call hype driven development. This new framework is shiny, I'm going to use it. Everybody wants to use AI, for example, now. It's fine, we can use AI, but show me why we need to use AI at the moment with metrics, hopefully. So that's very good. Obviously being very comfortable in an agile process, the fact that, and surprisingly, agile is still misunderstood at many levels. The fact that, your one sprint might be this, the other sprint might be a different part of the roadmap. You might do something, the whole roadmap might change on a quarterly basis. People still feel kind of uncomfortable with these things, which is also natural because it's a natural human tendency to want to finish something. And most of the time, which is again very, very natural, conditions change, the market changes, commercials change, sales strategies change, so many things change, and you have to change your roadmap. So you leave your thing half done and you feel frustrated. It's okay, that's what Agile is there for. So understanding that, and I would say the most important thing for me is that the more senior you are, the more you need to be wary of the people. As I mentioned before, it's all about the people. So shout out Dan Gownis, by the way, for that quote.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like it's really stuck with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So understanding the customer, as I said before, but also understanding how to be able to communicate, collaborate in a team, and influence a team better. So a senior software engineer that can only work by themselves is not a senior software engineer in my head. A senior is, most importantly, able to lead. So the best way to amplify your output is by being able to guide the team toward a solution that you designed and you refined and you cut down into stories and you deliver and you help deliver with them. So pair with them, unblock them, talk to them about it, help with the rollout and everything. No matter how good you are technically, it's you're never going to be able to do as much as a team of seniors, mid-levels, and juniors. So being able to lead a team, influence a team, coordinate a team is very, very important. On the senior level, and to be clear, leadership is not management. I'm talking about managing people, I'm talking about leading and influencing, right? So it's actually quite interesting once you realize that you can, amplify your impact to the company many times over by leveraging other people and inside your team and outside, but mostly inside your team. So once you do that as an engineer, that is probably, the best way to kind of, grow. So the more you can show me that you're down that path of understanding people and communicating well, the more likely it is to be hired as a senior.
Yeah. I really loved the quote you said earlier, which was software is built for people, by people. It's so simple, but I think a lot of the time you get mesmerized by what it does, the tools, and you sometimes maybe forget the purpose and who it's helping. So I really like that. I think that's something that'll stick with me as well. Tech tests, should we talk about them? What do you think? You'd be happy to? Okay, cool. I don't want to get you in any trouble. But, for me, I mean, obviously being on the recruitment side, I've got my views on them as well. I think sometimes it can be useful. It's actually funny. I saw an analogy yesterday. It was somebody shared it on LinkedIn who's I think he might have been a CTO actually, where he said, "You want to come and give me a quote for a job? Okay, great. Can you build me a small wall outside? build it using bricks and stuff like that, and then I'll come out, check it, yep, great, perfect, you've got the job. Is that essentially sometimes what it looks like that we're doing with software developers, where we're giving them a piece of work to do, go away, do it for 2 hours, bring it back, cool, yep, great, that's done, right, yeah, you can do the job. So what are your sort of thoughts, I guess, maybe on that analogy, but also on tech tests as well?
On that analogy is great in the sense that if it actually made financial sense to, build a small wall outside your house every time you wanted to build that'd be great. But, software is for ephemeral. So I guess it kind of lends itself more to that kind of thinking. But yes, if you could do it, you would do it, realistically, wouldn't you? I think it's interesting that the software development industry has grown so much without the need for standardization or kind of like sort of there's no such thing as a bar for lawyers or a medical panel for doctors. You can just become a software engineer by just learning, right? And that's it. So there's no such thing that no employer can be 100% sure of their abilities until you actually start doing the work. So the question is, the underlying fundamental question that we're actually asking is, can you do the job that I want you to do in this company, in this specific context, with my tools, with my issues, with my customers, and with the existing team? And this is what you're actually trying to solve for as an interviewer. So your assessment of the technical skills should be based on that thinking. So giving somebody a random test, a code test that does not apply to your company, as in, I've done this before, by the way, I've done this mistake as an interviewer, where we were building, a very crowd-based application. And for mid-level engineers, we just gave them a calculator challenge, for example. You will never see that in my code base. I actually don't care if you can do a calculator. You can Google it for that matter, it's not a big deal. So the question is, can you collaborate with people? Can you understand my code base? Can you write tests the way we write them with our standards of unit testing and integration testing and everything? Can you understand my pipelines? Can you understand my architecture? So working backwards from that's my personal opinion. I feel the best way to test somebody's technical abilities before the actual face-to-face interview is to take part of your code base and introduce a very sneaky bug, or that kind of makes some tests fail, but it's not very obvious. Or take a feature out and ask them to put it back in. Or or just just jumble the code a bit. So it's still working, but it's not readable. It's not really good code. Ask them to make it readable, make it better, do the Boy Scout rule or whatever. If from all the other tests that you could possibly give, this is possibly the most realistic that they could have. But building on top of that, I wouldn't just give them the test and then pretty much ask them to, do it themselves and then come back to me and then I'll score it. Because realistically, they will never code by themselves. They will always have people in the team. So they will be pairing, they will be having questions, they will be asking questions, clarifying ones. The best way to address that is to bring them in the office and have them pair for an hour with one of your more senior engineers to solve that challenge. And as is always a good practice in pairing, think out loud, ask questions. Our engineers at the backseat driving, giving you instructions or directions, clarifying things, and then going just time box it, because you never get to full solution anyway. Time box it and assess how they think, what kind of questions they ask, how far along they went. Obviously, that's a very good indicator, and the quality of what they're putting out there. I feel this personally for me is the best way to assess somebody's coding. So to be fair, there's a trade-off there because you have to invest time, into the office for everyone.
Yeah.
But you're hiring for long-term retention, right? I think that's time well invested. An hour or two of somebody pairing with 20 candidates is time well spent when hiring. And then if you go a little bit higher up, you can argue the same for architecture as well, not specific code challenges. So within architecture, take your existing system, pull a feature out, and ask them to say, a product manager came and asked for this new feature that is missing, and this is our current architecture. what would you do?
Yeah, like how would you design it and things
Not
like
how
that,
you design
yeah.
it.
Okay.
What questions would you ask?
Okay.
Right? Because the first thing you need to do, you don't really know what's.
No,
You tell them, oh, this is just a feature. Somebody wants notifications. Okay, what type of notifications? What channels? Email, push, whatever. How often? Real time or not? What kind of detail they have? Security issues, performance issues, scalability issues. How many users at any given second? Blah blah blah. You have to think of the whole thing from a functional all the way to non-functional point of view. And one more thing, do not surprise people. I hate surprising people with, okay, this is the problem, go, kind of thing. I would share all of that detail well ahead of time from the pairing session for the person to read at their own leisure and come prepared as much as possible.
Yeah.
Even asking questions before time is also good. There's no reason, there's no gotchas in interviews, I feel.
Yeah.
Like there's no such thing as I'll throw him a curveball that he has to think on his feet.
Yeah.
Again, you won't have to do it in real time in your actual work.
No, of
you will
course.
take your time, you will speak to people. So don't throw people off.
Yeah, I've heard a lot that, interviews aren't really real world scenarios. So there's been a couple of guests that I've had that have said that they feel, the best way to do interviews and tests is to talk about real world scenarios and put them in, I guess real world in your world would be your existing company and the environment. So yeah, no, I agree. I think that's really important. So do you think they're necessary? Do you think it is good to still test people technically in development?
You have to. Unless, again, on a company level, you have to be sure that you're investing time and money on somebody that will be the best fit for what you're trying to do. And
Yeah.
given the fact that so many candidates usually for a position, you have to a certain extent. It's just about making the candidate experience as comfortable as possible, not stressful. And also, you as an interviewer, extracting as much value out of that as well. So not giving tasks or questions that really don't add value to your specific situation.
Yeah. And do you think that developers need to always have this mindset of continuous learning for them to be able to progress in their career?
Oh, how can you not? Well, that's my answer, really. Like, then there's no such thing as not keeping up with things. As we know, tech moves fast. You have to. You have to go forward. You have to make sure you won't be left behind, because there's a lot of people out there that are engineers. To be honest, there's actually more jobs than engineers. But still, there is a lot of people out there that will be competing for the same role as you. You have to make sure you have an edge. You can adapt really quickly. Having said that, learning a new technology doesn't take too long, really, realistically. Given the time and the effort that you can put into personal projects or at work to learn something new, I wouldn't expect you to take too long, given that you understand underlying good principles of software development, like thinking about complexity, essential versus accidental, thinking about trade-offs, thinking about code structure in general, whether it's whatever language, thinking about good UI code structure and UI designs, whatever your framework of front-end development. These things take time to understand, and the best way to learn is through failure, basically. So building that knowledge is very important, but also, to a certain extent, you would like to optimize your chances of really hit the ground running in this new position, right? So it's very, very important to learn to keep up with the technologies as well.
Yeah, no, great. No, I agree as well. I think the only way that you're going to progress and get ahead in your career is by always, trying to keep on top of new technologies, keeping on top of things that are coming in the market, and just having that thirst for knowledge. And I find that in the software industry, there's a lot of people that have a thirst for knowledge, and that's essentially what got them into the industry. I really liked what you said right at the start of the podcast, that usually it's people, you wanted to be in this industry, you chose to be in this industry, you had a passion for it, so, why not take it as far as you can? So, what would you say the plans hold for Michael for the future? I know you touched on mentoring earlier. Yeah. Is there anything, that you'd like to achieve both inside and outside of work? It's not always work, but,
Well, at the moment, my personal goals are, at work at least, I'm excited to be part of this big company. with Core Renaissance Global, and it's just building basically the biggest team I've ever built. To be honest, I've had about 7 teams under me now at the moment, and they're probably going to grow more. It's quite a challenge. It's quite a big shift to what I was used to before. I always was between 1 or 2 teams really, so that is great. From a personal point of view, it's just family, really. I've got 2 small kids. It's all about spending the most time with them because they do grow up so fast. I can't believe how fast they're growing. So I kind of feel bad not spending time with them, to be honest. As far as the company is concerned, it is very thankfully on a growth trajectory. So kind of expanding internationally. There's so many new challenges for going global, obviously in terms of scale, operations, and things like that. And being acquired by Renaissance Learning in the US, who has a very complementary suite of products. We're trying to integrate them, which is also very, very nice.
Yeah, so a bigger challenge than you've ever faced, but sometimes it's nice to get out of that, not a comfort zone, but being challenged and, keeps things interesting.
You can never not be challenged. I feel very uncomfortable when things don't feel challenging, to be honest. Like, if I have a fear, is probably unrealized potential. It's the biggest fear.
Yeah, so you're uncomfortable with being comfortable.
Absolutely, yes.
Michael, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time today. I've really enjoyed chatting.
Great.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you.